My name is Helen Carter, and I am 62 years old. Last night, I learned the kind of truth no mother should ever have to face. My own son beat me until my lips split open over a bowl of soup that had no salt. I can still feel the sting of the broth running down my cheek, the shards of porcelain cutting into my hands as I tried to pick them up from the kitchen floor. He towered over me, calling me useless, pathetic, not even worth the roof over my head. And then, as if it were nothing, Lucas slammed his bedroom door and went to sleep. I lay on the cold tile with an old rag pressed against my bleeding mouth, my body trembling, my heart breaking in a way I never thought possible. Morning came, but it brought no peace. My arms ached with bruises. My neck was tender where his fingers had dug into my skin, and every movement reminded me of his rage. Yet, at 5 o'clock sharp, I dragged myself out of bed. Habit, or maybe fear, pulled me forward. By the time I entered the kitchen, Lucas was already sitting at the table in his flawless navy suit. He didn't even glance at me. His eyes were glued to his phone. "Breakfast," he ordered flatly. "Hurry. I have a meeting." His voice was smooth, cold, as though the night before had never happened. I scrambled his eggs with the 3 spoonfuls of shredded cheddar he insists on, toasted the bread to the exact shade he likes, and poured his black coffee without sugar. Every detail had to be perfect, because if it wasn't, I knew what would come. That's when Marissa walked in, his wife, in her mint green dress and high heels, the scent of expensive perfume trailing behind her. She kissed him lightly on the cheek and gave me that sweet little smile she saves for when he is watching. "Good morning, Mrs. Private Carter," she sang. "How are you today?" I wanted to scream the truth. I wanted to tell her that my body throbbed, that my soul felt crushed. Instead, I whispered the lie I had grown used to. "I am fine. Thank you." Lucas reached into his briefcase and handed me a small box. Inside was an expensive foundation. "For your scrapes, Mom," he said, smiling the way only liars smile. "You tripped last night, remember?" Tripped. That's what he calls the bruises his fists left on me. And I, his mother, the woman who gave him everything, nodded silently, clutching that box like proof of my own humiliation. It is strange how a house can change its meaning. 30 years ago, when I first bought my home in Norfolk, Virginia, it was my sanctuary. I saved every penny working as a courthouse secretary, skipping vacations, mending my own clothes, sacrificing so my son could have more. I thought these walls would always protect me. Now, they feel like a prison I cannot escape. 3 years ago, Lucas arrived at my door with a suitcase in hand and sorrow in his eyes. He said his divorce had ruined him. "Just for a little while, Mom," he begged, "until I get back on my feet." His words brought back memories of the boy I raised after his father abandoned us. I opened the door without hesitation. The first weeks were almost normal. He took me grocery shopping, told me he was grateful. We even shared dinners at the kitchen table. For a moment, I believed maybe this was my chance to rebuild the bond I had always longed for. But little by little, things shifted. First came the remarks. "Mom, your cooking is too bland. Mom, you should iron your clothes. You look embarrassing. Mom, why don't you clean better?" They were sharp, but small enough that I brushed them off. Then came the money. "At your age, you shouldn't be carrying so much cash. Let me handle your accounts." Foolishly, I agreed. Within 6 months, my $1.300 monthly pension no longer reached my hands. He rationed me $20 a week, like pocket change to a child. The rest went directly into his accounts, into his suits, his dinners, his new car. When I asked, he said he was investing for my future. Soon after, he convinced me to put his name on the deed to my house. Just in case something happens to you, he said. I signed, not realizing I was handing him the weapon he would later hold over me. The insults became pushes. The pushes became slaps. And before I knew it, I was living in constant fear of his voice, his footsteps, his anger. I hid bruises under sweaters. I invented stories about falling, tripping, bumping into doors. I became a master of lies, not to protect myself, but to protect him. I used to be proud of my independence, proud of the career I had built, the life I had managed on my own. Now, I wake up every morning wondering not if, but when my son will erupt again. The morning after the soup incident, Lucas announced that Marissa was bringing colleagues from her office for lunch. 3 guests, he said while tightening his tie. Seafood, pasta, salad, and wine. And don't embarrass me this time, Mom. He dropped $60 onto the counter as if it were a generous gift. $60 for 5 people. My hands trembled as I picked up the bills, already calculating how to stretch them at the discount market. By noon, the table was set with the china I inherited from my mother and the crystal glasses I rarely dared to touch. I had cleaned every surface until my back ached, prepared shrimp pasta with frozen seafood, tossed a Caesar salad from scratch, and baked bread to make the house smell welcoming. I told myself everything had to be perfect because my safety depended on it. The doorbell rang, and in swept Marissa with 3 women dressed like they had stepped off a runway designer handbags. Flawless hair, heels clicking across my hardwood floor. She beamed at me. Mrs. Infraint. Carter. Let me introduce my friends. Beatrice, from HR. Brenda, from marketing. And my breath caught in my throat. And Claire Benton from legal. Claire, my younger sister, the one I hadn't spoken to in nearly 3 years. We locked eyes for a fraction of a second. Her gaze softened, then quickly turned professional. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Meyer. Carter, she said in a formal tone, pretending we were strangers. My heart pounded as I ushered them into the dining room. The women chatted about deadlines and vacations while I refilled glasses and served plates. But Claire's eyes never left me. She studied the makeup caked over my bruises, the stiffness in my posture, the way my hands shook when I set down the tiramisu. This food is wonderful, Beatrice exclaimed. Did you make all of this yourself? Yes, I replied with a practiced smile. I enjoy cooking. How lucky Ethan is, Brenda added lightly. Not everyone has a mother-in-law who takes such good care of the family. Mother-in-law, housekeeper, servant. The words blurred together, each one cutting me deeper. Then Claire spoke, her voice measured but sharp, and before retirement. Mrs. Carter, what did you do? Surely you weren't always at home. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of pride. I worked as a courthouse secretary in Richmond for 40 years, I said. I handled some of the most important cases in the state. Marissa's smile faltered. Claire's eyes glinted knowingly. Beneath the table, I clenched my fists. Something had shifted. The afternoon after Marissa's luncheon, I was clearing dishes when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. Lucas always warned me never to answer strangers, but something in me pressed the button. Mrs. Fresh. Carter? A man's voice asked. This is David Harlan, chief accountant at Harborline Investments, your son's firm. I am sorry to trouble you, but we need to speak immediately about irregular activity connected to your bank account. My account? I nearly dropped the phone. My heart began to pound. Yes, he continued. Transfers in the tens of thousands have been routed through your account. We cannot discuss details over the phone. Could you come to our office today at 3? I agreed in a trembling whisper. When I hung up, the walls seemed to tilt around me. My account? The same account Lucas had taken over years ago. The same one he claimed was for my safety. At 3 o'clock, I sat in a sleek glass office downtown, staring at documents spread across the desk. David Harlan's tone was steady but grave. Over the past 6 months, more than $55,000 of company funds were diverted into your account, then withdrawn in cash. Mrs. Crast, Carter, this constitutes embezzlement. I didn't know, I stammered, my whole body shaking. Lucas manages everything. I never authorized anything. That's exactly why we called you, he said gently. We believe you're being used as cover. But unless you make a formal statement, you risk being implicated. The floor dropped out beneath me. My son wasn't only an abuser, he was a thief, and he had made me his shield. By the time I returned home, night had fallen. Lucas was waiting in the living room, still in his suit, tie loosened. His eyes narrowed the moment I stepped through the door. Where were you? I swallowed hard. At your office. I spoke with the accountant. His smile vanished. He rose slowly. A predator circling prey. You shouldn't have done that. Mom. His voice was low. Dangerous. If you ever breathe a word of this to anyone else, I'll have you declared incompetent. One signature. And you'll rot in a care facility while I keep this house. For the first time, I saw not just my son, but a stranger wearing his face. That night, sleep refused to come. Every creak of the house made my chest tighten. Around midnight, I crept into the kitchen for water. That's when I saw a shadow moving in the yard. My first thought was Lucas had caught me awake and was about to unleash another storm. But when I peered through the curtain, I recognized the figure. It was Judith, my neighbor. Judith had lived next door for 20 years. A widow with kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking. She was crouched among the rose bushes, adjusting something small and metallic. When she noticed me at the window, she pressed a finger to her lips. The next afternoon, Judith knocked softly on my back door. Helen, may I come in? Her voice carried urgency. Once inside, she wasted no time. I put a camera outside your kitchen window. I heard him shouting again last night. It picked up everything. I froze. You recorded us? I recorded his threats. She corrected firmly. I've seen the bruises. Helen, I know you're afraid, but this is evidence. You can't keep protecting him. He's dangerous. I sank into a chair, my hands trembling. Judith reached into her purse and pulled out a tiny device. Listen. She pressed play. There it was, Lucas' voice. Clear and sharp. If you don't sign those papers at the bank, I'll have you locked away in a home. Nobody will believe you. You're just a senile old woman living off my generosity. Hearing his cruelty outside my own memory sent chills racing down my spine. Judith leaned closer. I have a friend, Rachel Nguyen. She works at the district attorney's office. She specializes in cases like yours, domestic abuse tied to financial exploitation. We need to go see her. Now. Fear surged through me. If Lucas finds out, if you keep waiting, hell ruin you completely. Judith interrupted, her tone hard. He's already stolen from his company. He's made you an accomplice without your knowledge. And he's threatening to take away your home. Do you want to die in silence, Helen, or do you want to fight? Her words cut deep. For years, I had been silent, hiding behind shame and fear. But as I stared at that recording device, I realized silence had only chained me tighter. I nodded slowly. Take me to her. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky itself knew a storm was coming. I sat at Judith's kitchen table, clutching a cup of tea, while she spoke with Rachel Nguyen over the phone. Rachel's voice was calm but decisive. "With that recording, we have enough to request an immediate arrest warrant. But Helen must file the complaint in person." I felt my stomach twist. Signing those papers meant no turning back. It meant declaring war on my own son. Judith squeezed my hand. "It's time." 2 hours later, Rachel met us at the courthouse. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a steady voice that gave me courage. We went through every detail: the bruises, the financial control, the threats, the recording. I signed the statement with a trembling hand, and Rachel immediately called the police. By 9:30, Lucas arrived at my house just as he had promised. He was immaculate in his black suit, hair slicked back, that polished mask of success. "Come on, Mom," he said smoothly. "We're going to the bank. Smile when you sign those papers, and maybe it'll forgive you." What he didn't know was that 2 patrol cars were already waiting down the street. The moment he stepped out of the house, officers closed in. "Lucas Carter, you are under arrest for domestic assault, financial exploitation, and embezzlement." The mask cracked. "What? This is insane. She's delusional. I take care of her." He twisted toward me, eyes blazing with betrayal. "Mom, what did you do?" I stood in the doorway, my knees weak but my voice steady. I told the truth. They cuffed him and pushed him into the squad car while he hurled threats over his shoulder. "You'll regret this. You'll be nothing without me." That afternoon, I found myself in a small courtroom for the bail hearing. Lucas sat at the defense table in handcuffs, his face tight with fury. Marissa was there too, sitting stiffly on the benches, mascara smudged under her eyes. The judge listened carefully as Rachel played the recording. Every vile word echoed through the chamber. When it ended, silence hung heavy. Given the evidence of repeated abuse and financial crimes, the judge declared, bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody until trial. Lucas shot up, shouting, "This is a setup! She's lying!" Officers restrained him as his voice cracked into rage. "Mom, when I get out, it'll make you pay for this." But for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. I thought with Lucas locked behind bars, the nightmare was finally ending. But monsters do not vanish simply because they are caged. 1 week after the bail hearing, a letter arrived at Judith's house where I had been staying. My hands shook when I recognized Lucas' handwriting on the envelope. Against Rachel's advice, I opened it. "Dear Mom," it began, "I hope you're proud of yourself, betraying your only son. But before you celebrate too much, know this. I have copies of the documents you hid during the Keaton Pharmaceuticals case 15 years ago. The ones you altered for your boss at the courthouse. If those come out, you'll face prison for obstruction of justice. Drop the charges, or I will ruin you." My breath caught. Memories flooded back nights when I stayed late at the courthouse, shuffling files at the request of attorneys I trusted. I thought I was simply doing clerical work. Could it have been more? Could I have really altered evidence without knowing? A second letter came days later, even crueler. Inside were photographs, memos with my handwriting. Dates changed, pages missing. "If you don't retract your lies," Lucas wrote, "these will be in every newspaper by next week. And the recordings I have of you taking cash gifts, tax evasion, Mom, another crime on your record." I collapsed into Judith's arms, sobbing. I had survived his fists, his threats, his control. But this was different. This was my past rising to destroy me. Rachel read both letters carefully, her brow furrowed. "This is textbook blackmail," she said. "But more than that, it's psychological warfare. He's trying to drag you back into silence. Helen, listen to me. We can flip this." How? I whispered. By confessing first, she replied. If we disclose your small mistakes voluntarily, the doll will see you as a victim who was manipulated, not a criminal. You take away his weapon by putting it in the open yourself. The idea terrified me. My reputation, my pride, the image I had kept intact all these years, it would all crumble. But as Rachel spoke, I realized Lucas' power came only from secrets. That night, Judith found me staring at the letters. You don't have to hide anymore, she said gently. The truth may hurt, but silence is killing you. I took a deep breath. For the first time, I knew what I had to do. If exposing myself meant stripping Lucas of his last weapon, then so be it. Tomorrow, the world would know everything. The next afternoon, cameras filled a small press room in Virginia Beach. Microphones crowded the table where I sat, my palms damp against the wood. Rachel stood beside me. Judith, in the front row, her eyes steady on mine. I leaned toward the microphones. My name is Helen Carter. I am 62 years old, and for the last 3 years, I have lived under abuse at the hands of my son, Lucas Carter. The room went still. I told them everything. The bruises, the financial control, the threats, the embezzlement that made me an unwitting accomplice. I did not stop there. My voice shook, but I pushed forward. I also want to admit mistakes of my own. 15 years ago, while working as a courthouse secretary in Richmond, I followed orders that I did not fully understand. I mishandled documents, and I accepted small gifts I did not declare. My son has used these mistakes to blackmail me from jail. Today, I take that weapon away. I will not be silenced by shame any longer. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The journalists scribbled furiously. For a moment, the weight lifted. I had torn the secret from Lucas' hands and spoken it into the light. That evening, the district attorney's office announced no charges would be filed against me. My voluntary confession, combined with the evidence of years of abuse, made it clear I was a victim, not a criminal. Lucas' fabricated recordings were proven fake. Another failed attempt to control me. At his trial months later, Marissa testified against him, finally admitting she had been threatened too. Lucas was convicted of embezzlement, domestic assault, and witness intimidation. He would spend many years behind bars. As for me, I was offered a consulting position at a nonprofit protecting seniors from financial abuse. The stipend was larger than my pension, but more than money, it gave me back a sense of purpose. My home was mine again. My nights were silent, not from fear, but from peace. One evening, the jail called. It was Lucas. His voice was no longer furious but hollow. Mom, are you ever going to forgive me? I breathed deeply. Forgiveness may come one day, Lucas, but fear will never come again. I hung up, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Secrets lose their power when dragged into the light. Abuse thrives on silence, but courage begins with truth. No matter your age or your past, it is never too late to reclaim your dignity and take back your life. When I look back on everything, I realize that silence was my greatest enemy. For years, I hid the bruises, the threats, even the fear inside me, because I thought protecting my son was more important than protecting myself. But the truth is, secrets only made him stronger. The moment I spoke out, the moment I faced my own mistakes and pulled everything into the light, his power over me collapsed. I learned that freedom does not begin when others rescue you. It begins when you decide you are worth saving. If you are living in fear, please know that it is never too late to reclaim your dignity and your life. I chose courage over silence, and it gave me peace at last. Now, I want to ask you, what lesson do you take from my story? And from which city are you watching today?